This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Kenyans, Tanzanians, and Americans among dozens killed in an attack in Somalia's port city of Kismayo. Leaders of Angola, DRC, Uganda, and Rwanda agreed to amicably settle their regional disputes. And South African city opens healthcare facility for undocumented migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. A South African engineer's solution for tackling congestion in public health care facilities. And in sports, Simona Halep stuns Serena Williams to win the women's Wimbledon singles final. We begin the broadcast in Somalia, where Islamist gunmen have killed 26 people, including Kenyans, Tanzanians, Americans, and a Briton. They stormed a hotel in the southern port city of Kismayo on Friday. A regional state president said on Saturday that the attack is the deadliest in the city since al-Shabaab insurgents were driven out in 2012. A car bomb first exploded at the hotel, where local elders and lawmakers were having a meeting on Friday night, and then 3 gunmen stormed in. According to a local police officer, it took 11 hours before security forces ended the overnight attack. The dead included a presidential candidate for August's regional elections, at least 2 journalists, and a UN agency staff member who were also reported to have been killed. The Egyptian parliament has approved a presidential decree to extend the nationwide state of emergency for another 3 months. Egypt has been fighting terrorism since 2013, but the emergency state was imposed all over the country in April 2017 after dozens were killed and injured in 2 bomb attacks that targeted churches. CGTN's Adel El Maroui has more.
Extending the emergency state is a clear statement. Egypt still believes terrorism threats are not over yet. The exceptional state of law gives security authorities the right to arrest suspects and inspect properties without prior judicial permits. While the most of Egyptians don't feel the impact of that state during their daily lives, in North Sinai, the situation is quite different.
Egyptians have been living under the emergency state since the 1970s. Its extension has become nothing more than a routine to them. The situation in North Sinai is different. Since 2013, it has seen an unprecedented wave of terrorism. Citizens in North Sinai do feel the restrictions. There's curfew imposed. They see how the security forces apply that privileges they have against any suspected behavior, because at the end, they live in an exceptional environment too.
While the number of attacks have sharply dropped thanks to the comprehensive counter-terrorism military operation in 2018, there are indications that terrorist attacks could be rising.
The emergency state helps the military operations decrease the rate of terrorist attacks. Sinai used to see more than 1,200 attacks annually, but now it's down to 700. That has decreased to just 8 or 10 in 2018. 2019, however, is seeing a growth in attacks. That is mainly because the jihadists shifted their tactics. They have increased their minor attacks like planting small roadside bombs, and they are focused more on the police forces instead of the army, who are lightly armed.
The Egyptian constitution stipulates that the emergency state must only be for a period of 3 months. It could be renewed with the parliament's approval. President el-Sisi has never seen any opposition against declaring or renewing the state of emergency from the legislative chamber.
Egypt has been quite effective with its 2018 counter-terrorism military campaign. The emergency state has been an integral part for the success of that campaign. But the country is realizing that security solutions alone are not going to solve that insurgency crisis. That's why the government is eyeing to invest some $6 billion in economic development in the Sinai. Adel Maroui, CGTN, Cairo.
We now head to Angola, where 4 leaders from the Great Lakes region have committed to having open dialogues to resolve disputes touching on trade and security. Presidents Paul Kagame of Rwanda, Uganda's Yoweri Museveni, and Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo were hosted by Angolan President João Lourenço in the quadripartite summit that was held in the Angolan capital, Luanda. At the same time, President Kagame and his Ugandan counterpart, Yoweri Museveni, have pledged to resolve tensions between the two nations. Trade between the two neighbors has been severely affected since February after Rwanda closed her border with Uganda. The two countries have been accusing each other of spying and political interference. And still on returnees, 163 migrants have been brought back to the country from war-torn Libya. The International Organization for Migration facilitated the return with support from some agencies of the Nigerian government. The returnees are the latest to be brought back home under the IOM Special Voluntary Assisted Return Program, which is being funded by the European Union. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus with more on that story.
This particular trip back means a lot for the returnees, considering the war going on in Libya. Most of them expressed joy at being brought back home and deep regret ever embarking on the journey in the first place. They narrated horrible tales in Libya detention centers, where some of them said they spent about 8 months. Now, many of the migrants you actually find in detention centers across Libya are those who were intercepted by the Libyan Coast Guard while attempting to cross the Mediterranean Sea into Europe. Now, the UN and human rights groups have actually documented all manner of inhumane conditions in some of the facilities where these migrants are held. And there are even allegations that some of them are being used as human shields in the ongoing war. Now, some of the returnees are believed to be part of the inmates released from the recently targeted migrant detention center in Tripoli. In April, IOM said there are over 60,000 Nigerians still stuck in the North African country. And one can only wonder what the fate of those Nigerians are at this moment. This latest returnees bring up the total number of Nigerians who IOM has actually assisted back home from Libya to over 12,000 since the special voluntary repatriation program started in April 2017. Now, the fresh returnees are expected to go through a special reintegration program before they are then set up in any small enterprise of their choice. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
In South Africa, the city of Tshwane has opened a new hub that will offer free and confidential primary health care services for vulnerable people. It will mainly focus on undocumented migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees living in the area. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more on that story.
South Africa remains the main country of destination for asylum seekers, refugees and migrants in southern Africa. Oftentimes, foreign nationals and asylum seekers face major challenges here. Often, migrants, immigrants and asylum seekers find themselves in vulnerable situations for a wide range of reasons, and the Migrant Project aims to alleviate their troubles. This new hub will provide social, health and legal orientation services to assist asylum seekers to better understand their rights and what services are available from other local supporting partners. It's an initiative that has been brought about in partnership between Medicines Sans Frontiers or Doctors Without Borders and the Sidiba Hope Medical Center and Tshwane Central Business District.
We speak out for those that don't have a voice. And I can say that this goes back to the heart, the origin of MSF, because the organization itself was founded by medical doctors and journalists. And the medical doctors want to treat and the journalists want to speak. Through this project, we're able to speak and try to have a larger influence.
The center provides funded services for your most at-risk and undertreated populations, such as migrants, refugees and asylum seekers, sex workers, the homeless and substance users. Such groups often experience huge barriers in accessing conventional primary healthcare services.
Some refugees were on hand to share their experiences. They all believe that having access to information is always key, and centers like these are strategic to them.
Whatever the situation can come forth, there is always a solution. But if you do not have an idea, you lack information, then you end up getting to jail for no proper reason.
The hub will also provide a safe space for asylum seekers and migrants with free amenities to improve their well-being. Yolisa Njamala for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Well, the news continues on Africa Live. Let's take a look at what's coming up. A South African engineer's solution for tackling congestion in public health care facilities. And one man's mission to preserve an ancient Egyptian musical instrument.
Africa, the most iconic wildlife destination in the world. Its unique ecosystems were formed over countless eons. Many people can only dream of visiting this natural paradise. But now, for the first time ever, CGTN Wild Wonderland live show is bringing Africa to you through all of our online platforms. 14 episodes from July 22nd to 28th take you to adventure through the Great Plains of Kenya's Masai Mara, the Serengeti in Tanzania, and the Greater Kruger Park in South Africa. Welcome aboard the wildest ride of a lifetime. This is Wild Wonderland live show, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. The China-initiated Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank has approved the membership of Benin, Djibouti, and Rwanda, bringing AIIB's total approved membership to 100. The decision was made unanimously this Saturday by AIIB's Board of Governors at its 4th annual meeting. It was held for the first time outside Asia. The AIIB, a multilateral development bank investing in sustainable infrastructure and other productive sectors in Asia and beyond, began operations in January 2016. A young South African engineer has created an innovative solution to dispense medicines to patients with chronic illnesses. It's called the Pele Box. It has the potential to drastically reduce waiting times and congestion in public healthcare facilities. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
31-year-old Neo Hutiri is the inventor of the Pele Box. The Pele Box allows health workers to stock the lockers with pre-packaged prescription refills, log the medicine on the system, and secure each locker. The system then sends out an SMS to let a patient know that their medication is ready for collection at their local clinic. Hutiri came up with the idea for Pele Box after having to queue for long for medicine at a public hospital.
My journey into health started by accident. So I was diagnosed with TB, and like millions of South Africans, I started going to my local clinic and in Bophelong Township in the Bao, which is where I used to live. And I was on treatment for about 6 months. And in that journey of me being in treatment, I think I can admit to being a very unhappy patient during that period. And my unhappiness was very much of, I know that I have to finish my treatment. I understand what is involved in me managing this disease, and I understand what is required of me.
At some public hospitals, patients can wait for hours for medication, while using Pele Box takes 36 seconds. According to Hutiri, the Pele Box also collects data for clinics, letting them know which patients are sticking to their treatments and collecting their medicine on time.
It will reduce the burden of our elders, our patients, to wake up in the morning by 3 o'clock in the morning, go and wait in the queues. Maybe you'll find out they'll be helped by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but they were there from morning. You'll find some of them are hungry, you know. So to us, it's a great initiative, and we're very happy for the ORAM to put this kind of machines that will help our chronic patients to get their medicine.
The launch was done in conjunction with PEPFAR. PEPFAR is the US government's initiative to help save the lives of those infected with and affected by HIV and AIDS around the world.
So, as everybody knows, South Africa has the world's largest HIV epidemic with 7.5 million people living with HIV/AIDS and about 200,000 people becoming infected newly every year. So it's the epicenter of the epidemic right here. And as such, South Africa has actually been the leader in the prevention, diagnosis, care, treatment of HIV to date. Today, the Pele Box system serves, though, as yet another example of the continued efforts to put patients at the center of that experience.
The Pele Box has already been tested at selected clinics in Gauteng with 100% success rate. There is no dispute. South Africa's healthcare system needs major reforms. Even government on a number of occasions admitted to this. The Pele Box will go a long way in alleviating the burdened health system. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Tembisa, South Africa.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit and return to our headline story in Somalia, where 26 were killed in a Kismayo hotel attack. Somalia is slowly coming to terms with a deadly terrorist attack that has claimed more than 20 lives and injured close to 60 others. Among those injured include 2 Chinese nationals who were on an assessment mission in the region. From Mogadishu, CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo reports.
It's an attack that caught many by surprise. On Friday evening, gunmen from the Al-Qaeda-linked group set off a car bomb outside this hotel in downtown Kismayo before engaging security forces in a gun battle that lasted for more than 10 hours. Medina Hotel in downtown Kismayo was quite popular and mostly frequented by lawmakers, clan elders and members of the diaspora returning to invest in the port city.
4 militants launched their attacks. One of them detonated the vehicle at the entrance to the hotel. 2 were neutralized and the 4th was injured and is in the hands of the government. Such attacks are new to Kismayo. I urge security forces to increase surveillance, especially now that we are headed for elections.
Those killed include legislators and a presidential aspirant for regional elections next month. A popular female journalist alongside her husband were among the dead. 2 Chinese nationals were also wounded in Friday's coordinated attacks. Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the attacks, insisting that its fighters had achieved their intended objectives. It's the first large-scale attack by the terrorist group in Kismayo, 6 years after it lost control of the city to Allied forces. For years, the port city served as a financial lifeline for the group before it was wrestled by AMISOM and Jubaland forces.
Al-Shabaab is not just a Somali threat. It poses a transnational threat that needs international support. Today we lost many people of different nationalities. Let's increase our resolve and battle the militants in a different approach from which we have been employing.
The current president, Ahmed Mohamed Islam, is seeking re-election for a 3rd term, but is facing increased opposition from some of his former aides. The federal government in Mogadishu has also been accused of seeking to oust the leader, who enjoys wide support among members of the security forces. The regional administration in Kismayo has been successful in containing Al-Shabaab's ever-increasing threat in the region, but the latest attack raises serious security concerns as to how the militant group managed to obtain police uniform and carry out such a deadly attack in the center of the city. US forces have increased pressure on the group in recent months. Earlier this year, close to 70 Al-Shabaab fighters were targeted in an aerial strike 50 kilometers north of Kismayo. The militants were targeted after storming an army base critical to the war against terror. Abdulaziz Billo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
And to Egypt, where a local initiative is seeking to preserve the use of an ancient musical instrument. Near the coastal city of Port Said, Mohammed Ghali is helping to keep the legacy of the Semsemia alive. Astatal has more.
The Semsemia dates back to pharaonic times in Egypt. Mohammed Ghali's love for the musical instrument also has a long history. He made his first semsimiya in the 1980s.
The first thing I did was make an instrument. I loved the semsia because I used to listen to resistance songs on the radio during the displacement period where people would sing to the sesmia. I fell in love with it as I found it as a magical instrument that really touched me.
In February, Muhammad's spirits weren't as high after his workshop was demolished to make way for a shopping mall. Weeks later, he found a new venue for El Toratea, a folk art association he founded in 2005, dedicated to the semsimiya. The museum not only appreciates the musical instruments past, but also celebrates its future. Iman Hado fell in love with the semsimiya as a child. She learned the instrument traditionally played by man and took it a step further by forming an all-girl band.
A year ago, I was wondering, what's the problem with me being the only girl who plays the semsimiya? Why not other girls popularize the instrument through playing and singing? Why not create a band?
The musical instrument has strong roots in coastal towns along the Suez Canal. With his museum and craftsmanship, Muhammad hopes to continue to carry on its legacy. Astatal, CGTN.
All right, we've got your sports news coming up after the break. Don't go away, don't touch that dial. Here's a look at what's ahead.